Greetings in the everlasting name of our God. Portions for today's reading is from Genesis 30 to 31. Genesis 30 continues the unfolding story of Jacob's family, marked by rivalry and God's intervention. Rachel, unable to bear children, gives her maid Bilhah to Jacob, resulting in the births of Dan and Naphtali. Leah, seeing this, gives her maid Silpah, and Gad and Asher are born. Later, God remembers Rachel and she gives birth to Joseph, bringing her joy and relief. Meanwhile, Jacob seeks independence from Laban and proposes a plan regarding livestock wages. Through God's blessings and wisdom, Jacob prospers greatly despite Laban's manipulation. This chapter reveals that human striving cannot replace God's timing and purpose. The competition between Rachel and Leah reflects how comparison can distort God's blessings in our lives. Yet, God remains faithful and works even through imperfect humans, according to fulfill His plan. Joseph's birth signifies divine remembrance. God never forgets His promises. Jacob's prosperity shows that God can bless His people even in unfair circumstances. In today's world, people often rush ahead of God due to pressure, comparison, or insecurity. Genesis 30 teaches us to trust God's timing rather than forcing outcomes. Even when surrounded by competition or injustice, God's favor can still lead to growth and success. It reminds us that blessings are not earned by manipulation, but received through faith and dependence on God. Patience and trust in God brings everlasting fruit. Am I trying to force blessings instead of waiting on God's perfect timing? Do I trust God to prosper me even in unfair situations? In Genesis 31 describes Jacob's decision to leave Laban after years of service. Seeing Laban's attitude change and guided by God's command, Jacob secretly departs with his family and possessions. Rachel takes her father's household idols without Jacob's knowledge. Laban pursues Jacob, but God wants him in a dream not to harm Jacob. When they meet, tensions rise, but Jacob defends his integrity and recounts his hardships. Finally, they make a covenant of peace and set up a pillar as a witness before parting ways. This chapter highlights God's guidance in transitions and His protection over His people. Jacob's journey shows that obedience sometimes requires bold and difficult decisions. God's warning to Laban reveals His authority over all human intentions. The covenant symbolizes the importance of setting boundaries and seeking peace. It also reminds us that God sees our struggles and defends us in due time. In life, there are moments when we must step out of unhealthy or limiting environments. Genesis 31 teaches us to listen to God's voice and act in faith, even when the path is uncertain. God not only leads, but also protects and vindicates His people. It encourages us to maintain integrity despite opposition. Establishing healthy boundaries and trusting God in transitions are essential for spiritual growth. Points to ponder. Am I willing to obey God when it requires stepping into the unknown? Do I trust God to protect and justify me in conflicts? May God bless us with these words. Amen.